In today's video I'm creating this high-resolution frame mockup that is fully animated. I'm using Photoshop to create the mockup and Google's latest Gemini 3 Pro to generate the images and the video. And the animated mockup, the prompts and the design files are free for you to use and download with the link in the video description. My name is Ruben Stom and I hope you enjoyed today's video. The plan for today's video is simple. I first used Photoshop to create a reference image by blocking in the scene. I then used the reference image in NanoBanana Pro to transform it into a photorealistic and high-resolution image of a frame. And this isn't a full working mockup yet, so back in Photoshop I'll show you how you can create a mockup out of the generated image. I create a second image in NanoBanana Pro that I use as a starting frame for the animated shadows. And in that same chat window I convert that image to a short animation using VEO 3.1. Then finally, back in Photoshop, I put everything together and show you how you can create a beautiful animated frame mockup yourself. Okay, so the first step is to create a very simplistic image by blocking in the scene. And the reason that I'm using this technique is because it enables me to show the model the measurements and the placement of the mockup. You can use this technique for all sorts of photography, but it is especially important for mockups because you need precise measurements. I start by creating a shape in a 4:5 ratio, and this will be the base of our frame. After that I'll add a beige background color to differentiate the background from the frame. And I use a brown border for a frame, and later in the Gemini chat we'll refer to this as the wooden frame border. I'm giving the blocks different colors so I can refer to a specific color and instruct the AI model very precisely. And this allows me to take full control over the exact placement of my instructions later in the Gemini chat. And I add a drop shadow and an inner shadow, and again it doesn't have to be realistic, it is just about showing the model where the shadows need to be placed and what direction the light comes from. Once I'm finished with the result, I save it as a JPEG on my desktop as a reference image. So I first open up Gemini in the browser and I start by selecting the 3 Pro model and using the Create Image button. I then paste in the prompt, and there are some things here that I like to point out. I use the word realistic right away to let the AI model know that I want a different type of photo than the reference image, as I'm using a very simplistic image that I want to turn into a realistic high-resolution photo. I give it the instructions to use the reference image for proportions and layout. And I then start by referring to different blocks and colors, such as adding a walnut wooden frame where the brown border is, and a plaster textured wall instead of the beige background. I also let the AI model know what I like to use the photo actually for, so in our case a mockup. And this will result in a blank area where I can place my artwork in Photoshop. Finally, I give it the instructions for the lighting and the shadows to make sure that it creates subtle shadows in the right places of the image. I'm actually very happy with the first try, and that's something that I noticed with NanoBanana Pro by the latest Gemini 3 Pro model. It has become so clever and accurate that it more often than not generates the result I'm looking for in just one shot. And if you don't like something, you don't have to start over, you can just iterate and make adjustments, like in the example here where I asked the model to change the wooden frame into a reflective golden frame. Now that I have the photo for the mockup ready, I open it in Photoshop to create a working mockup out of it. I first save this document as this will become the main file for the animated mockup. I create a new document with a 4:5 ratio and create a smart object out of it which will function as the placeholder for the artwork. I rename this as replaceable and I copy it over to the frame mockup file. Here I adjust the size of the smart object to match it with the white area of the frame. And once placed correctly, I set the blending mode to multiply to show the shadows of the mockup. And finally I check if everything works correct by inserting an image in the smart object layer. Now that the mockup actually works, I start with the next step, which is creating the shadow overlay. And I've been creating mockups for years now, and I personally love working with shadow overlays. It makes mockups so much more interesting to look at and gives a real sense of depth and uniqueness to the design. What I need for a shadow overlay to work in Photoshop is a realistic looking photo of shadows that cast onto a plain white background. And because NanoBanana Pro struggles with outputting just that, I came up with a very simple but effective trick. Instead of generating an image with just a shadow overlay on a plain white background, I create an image of a specific flat surface like a concrete or a brick wall with shadows casting onto that wall. And I then ask it to remove the wall, leaving just the shadows on a plain white background. I'm very happy with the result. It looks realistic due to the amount of details, and the shadows has a lot of depth to it because of the nuances in the softness and the blurriness. And the only thing that I notice is that it may be a bit too busy when I use it as an overlay later in Photoshop. So I may need to zoom in and only use a specific part of the shadow. But that's something that I'll have to see later in Photoshop. So for this part you can get really creative and try all different sorts of shadows. You can try different sources that cast the shadow or play around with the intensity or the softness of the shadow. So an example that I love to use is a hard shadow coming from a window frame, which gives a very intense and cinematic look. Now that the image for the shadow overlay is generated, I want to turn it into a short video. And the prompt for this doesn't have to be comprehensive to be effective. So in my case, I uploaded the reference image I just created and added the prompt: animate the shadows to move around slowly as if there's a small breeze in the air. Because I instructed it to move around slowly, you get that very calm vibe, which is perfect for the frame mockup we're creating here. So I now have everything that I need to finish the animated mockup in Photoshop. So I open up the main mockup file I created earlier and add the animated shadows. I'll make sure that this is the top layer in the layers panel and set the blending mode to multiply. I play around with the positioning and size, and I adjust the opacity to make the animation more subtle. I don't want it to distract the viewer from the artwork itself. And the final step is to open the timeline, make the length of the layers match, and render it to a video. And that's it. I now have created a very unique mockup that I could use to, for example, showcase a digital print on Etsy or sell as a digital product. And you now have all the tools to create animated mockups yourself. Now don't forget to download the mockup and the design files. It is free and you can access it with the link that I added in the description of this video. I hope you had fun watching today's video, and if you did and would like to see more videos around design and AI, then I would very much appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section and I'll make sure to answer them. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.